So the Hurtigruten, I don't know if you've ever listened to their adverts, but they do promise that if you don't see the Northern Lights, they'll give you another trip free of charge, which I thought was quite attractive, but of course you have to pay for your flights again. So this is our second visit. Having been once before, it does give you a bit of an idea about what to expect and what you would do differently a second time round. So we went on the Nordkapp. It's one of their medium-sized ships. Now, I found this quite interesting. I looked at their online adverts last week, and this is for next January, and I see already that the superior rooms have already sold out. It's the kind of thing that if you want to do it, you have to plan well ahead. We didn't go for superior, we did a polar outside cabin. We particularly chose the starboard side because we didn't want the sound from the ferry unloading and loading its cargo all through the night. It just carries on working all through the night, and if you're on the wrong side of the ship, you do actually hear it. But if you plan well ahead, you can choose a cabin, you know, that suits you. And we chose one that was actually on the right side. So we were on the sea facing side, and if the Northern Lights appeared, they would appear from the north and the northwest. So we thought we'd be in the best position, and we actually chose a cabin that was up there on the 6th deck, which is, we were sort of somewhere around here. And the reason we chose that is we could get up onto this viewing deck here quite quickly, just going through one door and up a set of stairs. So I took quite a lot of planning for it. So the Nordkapp, it's not luxurious, but it's comfortable. We didn't know, but we'd actually got a triple suite. This actually turned into a bed. We actually slept in all 3 beds during our 7 nights. And we got heating underneath the floor in the bathroom. So it made for quite a comfortable base. We got on board about 6 in the evening, time to unpack and have a meal before we sailed out. So this is Bergen. We're sailing out of Bergen at 10:30 at night, I think it was. And I would say, bear with me with the photography, because actually I've learned a lot since I took these pictures. I'd love to do it all again and get fresh pictures, but there we go. So day 2, we spent 2 hours actually crossing an open sea. A lot of the sailing is done inside, a bit like if you go to Alaska, you go through the inside passage. Here you're going in and out of islands, and quite often you're sheltered, but we did have 2 hours of what could have been rough weather. It was, I mean, so this isn't a black and white picture, this is how it was. So at that point, we actually spent a couple of hours watching a film on board about the Northern Lights. They've got a team of expedition staff who look after the actual tourist side. The ferry people come and go as you would if you were going on a ferry over to France. So they kept us occupied if there was nothing else happening, and they booked up side trips off the ship. So this is all very typical scenery. I expect some of you have been up to Norway yourselves, and it might be familiar for you. So this is our first stop during the daylight hours, and this is to a place called Torvik. It's just a little fishing village on the island of Leonoi. There's only 1,400 people there, but they get a daily ferry, one going each way, which is served quite well for such a small village. Their mainstay is fishing, as is a lot of the coastal communities along there. Now, Allison was our afternoon stop. We had the opportunity of picking up a coach trip because we were there for 3 hours. We actually dock right up here, but there's a very, very pleasant, I don't know what you'd call it, quay. And we had walks right up here for the views. So we had a very pleasant time there. We chose not to do the official excursion here because A, it was expensive, and B, we thought we needed to stretch our legs. Now, those wooden houses along the front there, they're very typical for Norway and quite a lot of the Scandinavian countries. That's actually a maritime museum there. But in 1904, there was a terrible fire in Alisund, and many of their houses were actually burnt down to the ground. So they had to completely rebuild. So they're using bricks and mortar and stone. And it was at the time when the Art Nouveau was all the rage in Europe. So mostly these properties are all Art Nouveau style, and you can actually go on an Art Nouveau walking tour if you're interested in that sort of thing. I mean, so I like to see it and I love the colours, but I'm not into architecture in such a good way. Now, this we found very interesting. These two little girls were very friendly. They were going to school. This was, I think they were going back after lunch, but they're completely unchaperoned. Now, we don't do that kind of thing over here. And yet, you know, they weren't very old. So this is the harbour. There's quite a few fishing boats here. These two boats here had only just come into port, and the guys were actually preparing the fish on board, as they do if you go down to shore. And when you go through the locks there, you sometimes see them preparing, and they were throwing all the scraps overboard for the seagulls. A bit gory. This is a statue to, there are 80,000 Norwegians, or people living in Norway, who escaped to England and Scotland during the Second World War when the Nazis overtook Norway. So this is for the Norwegian resistance. It marks that time. And that was our view from the top of the hill, looking out, with our ship down there in the dock. So finally we actually get to see some snow. I was a bit disappointed when we were in Bergen that there was no sign of snow, and I was thinking, it's March, surely there should be snow. And I was thinking, we've come all this way, and I thought it was going to be a winter wonderland. So this actually picked up my spirits a little bit. So here, sunset came quite early in March. It was 6 o'clock in the evening. Quite changing light. Now this is just 15 minutes after sunset. This is at our next stop, a place called Mulder. We actually remember walking around here in the summer. It's beautiful. It's called the City of the Roses. They've actually got a good football team as well. And now this is a place called Kristiansand. This is 11 o'clock at night. So we're docking there. There's goods to be loaded and unloaded. So Trondheim is our next stop. So again, we're we're parked up here. We did a nice walk across the railway line and down into the town and over into this area. So we've got these finger posts. They're actually designed for the tourists who come off the ferry, I think. Everything seems to slip in quite well with the ferries. There's lots of people around to point you in the right direction and to help you. And there's maps on board when you want to go ashore for a wander around. So this was, you know, a fairly busy railway line. We saw some quite long goods trains going through. And look, we've actually got some snow. I was quite pleased about this. So these colourful houses are quite typical in Scandinavia in general. It's quite slippery underneath foot. You can see there, this is on a skate park, where they haven't actually cleared the snow. And what we took with us, we just wore our walking boots. And I've just taken this off a website. We used these, or what do they call them? Snow grips. You just put them on the bottom of your boots, and they were absolutely invaluable. We wore them a lot. So we made our way down to the Maritime Museum. Quite a nice area of the town, and these ships here in the foreground are roughly about 100 years old. Now the sad thing was it wasn't open, but I suppose it was only to be expected that time of year. But there was nothing to stop us having a good wander around and have a nose in. There was one or two that were being used as floating homes, but it was quite nice to see the colours reflected in the water, and the River Nidleva. Now, on board ship, you're giving, as in any cruise, you're giving advance warning of something that's going to be coming along. And we were told that we were coming up to quite a famous lighthouse, which I can't pronounce, hence the fact it's on the screen, but I know Yvonne's been there. I've seen her picture. So we had prior warning that we were coming up here, so we got out on deck, nice sunny afternoon, and it was quite a pleasant time, but it was quite, you know, the weather was coming in quite changeable. And here, I think we're back out in the sea, in the main sea, as opposed to being sheltered in the islands. These are Thelan Mountains in the background. Much of Norway is mountainous along the coast. We passed lots of these little communities, and they all seem to enjoy having colourful painted houses. And it's not evening, that's just a bad exposure. Lots of the islands are actually joined by these big bridges, and you can travel quite a long way actually out over the sea. Some of the coach trips that they take you on as a side trip, you get off the boat at one port, go off on a coach trip and come back 2 or 3 hours later, and you meet the ship at a different port. Now, this is quite a feature along the coast. These are, now they're called Norwegian fish drying frames, and they're standing up there ready to air dry the salted cod. Further up, we did actually see some salted cod. I think there is a season when they tend to do it. But they also have salmon farming. in these parts as well. If you go into our local supermarkets, you'll often find that the salmon has come from Norway. So we've been quite lucky today with sunshine. It really lights up the landscape. But also we had snow clouds coming in. And the reason we know they're snow clouds because we got caught in them. It's quite interesting to see how the weather front actually progresses. So it's quite localized. But it can come and go quite quickly. Now, there's a patch of aqua blue in the middle of the picture there. And if you look carefully, you can see there is a glacier. So I believe that's glacial meltwater with the sediment coming down into the sea. So here we have snow clouds here. It's making for quite an exposure challenge. Made me test my ability of handling a camera. So this is Rorvik, and we're really caught in a blizzard now. There's my husband out on deck. He's the video camera man. He's very kindly agreed for me to use them. So we only stop here for sort of half an hour, but it's long enough for people to go out and stretch their legs if they want to. And there's the forklift trucks. Wherever you go, the forklift trucks are always very busy, loading and unloading. And we were quite interested to be moored up next to the Richard With at Rorvik, because this is the ship that we did our 12-night trip on sort of 20 years ago. Interesting to see it's still running. And funnily enough, these ships do keep going. We've done other cruises on, other expedition cruises on old Hurtigruten ships. Ships were sort of 40 years old. So we were out on deck today before the dawn came, because we were told that we were going to be crossing the Arctic Circle about 7:30. So for us, it was an early morning, but the light was just wonderful. It's a bit surreal, actually. And, you know, I do wonder, was the white balance right in camera? But then I see my husband's video camera and his video has got that same pinky blue tinge, quite magical, really. You know, the sky, the air is very clear, which I think is why it attracts so many photographers up to that part of the coast. But I thought this was lovely. You know, the trees just take on a completely different aura, really. So it's snowing over there, but it's not snowing over the sea. Isn't that weird? So the old deck hands kept quite busy keeping the decks clear for us. You know, we were out on deck all the time. We enjoyed it. We were well wrapped up. Lots of people just stayed inside the observation lounge in the warmth. And I suppose the nice thing is with this kind of holiday, you can dart in and out. You don't have to get too cold before you can retreat back in for a warm up and a hot drink. This is quite interesting. There's a tiny spot of sunshine coming through. Thought that was quite weird. I think you might have seen that in competition recently, or was that Stenning? I can't remember.
Lovely.
It didn't go down very well. So we're coming up to another village, a village called Orness, and it's quite cold here. Hence the sea is freezing over. I mean, to say for a 15-minute stop, we didn't bother to get off the ship. But this lady was actually traveling on board ship with her dog, so she took the opportunity of exercising the dog. And I'll tell you a funny story. We were sailing up amongst the islands and the ship suddenly stopped in the middle of nowhere and we couldn't quite work out what was going on. We got a bit alarmed, actually. And then we saw there was a speedboat come out with a couple of guys on board. And one chap climbed up what I can only describe as being a rope ladder with a dog. I'm not quite sure how he did it, but he had like a, you know, the sheepdog type of thing. And anyway, he stayed on board for 24 hours and he was taking his dog to the vets. And I just thought how amazing that they would stop the ship midstream to pick up somebody so that they could take their dog to the vet. You know, it is life. It's real life, really. Again, we've got some localized sunshine here with the snow clouds in the background. I don't actually remember what this looked like in the summer because sadly all my photographs from our previous trip are all pre-digital. They're all on transparencies and we haven't actually had them out to look at for a long time. But seeing the colourful huts and cottages against the white snow, it's quite, you know, makes for quite a lovely picture. I've seen those mountains on lots of adverts for Norway. As this is really at the very back of the ship. So it's the postal ship. I think that's what it was originally, as well as a ferry. It was the ship that carried the post to from south to north, because there isn't a train service that runs all the way up. Now this is interesting. Can you see that dark forbidding sky in the background? We got some of that later. So we're in the Arctic Circle, and this is a town called Bodo. It's the largest one up in that part of Norland County. We got 2.5 hours here. And it's quite interesting. If you look, let's find my cursor. I've made it big especially. So this is the passenger ramp. You check in and out with a little credit card. And here is where all the cargo went. So you can imagine, you know, the noise of a big lorry coming on and off the ship. Hence the fact that you needed to be around the other side. But it was quite interesting to watch. Some of the cargo that I saw go on board varied from a jukebox, you know, a music machine, obviously lots of construction equipment, things for building pipelines and houses, glass. I also saw a coffin go on board. I'd like to think it was empty, but I don't know. They carry a lot of fish as well. So this is midday and 1 degree. So temperature's definitely dropping. It's quite interesting to see how the vehicles are equipped to deal with the conditions. So we've never had winter tyres on our car, but these have got studs in them, and I believe they're, by law, they have to have them on there. And this I thought was quite interesting. I don't understand it. But it's a lorry full of, well, it's a lorry and it's got a second truck behind it and it's full of snow. And you're thinking, what are they doing with it? Where are they taking it? But clearly they've got to deal with it somehow. Fortunately, the Hurtigruten's timetable slips in very neatly with the local buses. And we paid, my husband's notes tell me we paid the equivalent of about a £5 return to actually drive into town on a local bus. We did some window shopping. I don't know if we probably bought something. I was a bit tempted with these boots. I'd actually bought a pair of very fashionable blue boots back in 1980. That was before blue boots I'd ever seen them before. So I was tempted, but I didn't splash out, too expensive. And this is quite interesting. We had a conversation with this lady in red. She didn't speak English and we didn't speak Norwegian, but we were talking to her about her sled, which we've since discovered is called a kick sled. So she was using it here to help her keep her balance, but they also use them for putting their shopping on and for carrying the children. These wax wings, not the best nature photography, but we saw them and we were delighted to see them. They were just on the edge of the recreation ground. And we had to test how deep the snow was, because when you're on the pavement, although you're walking on snow and ice, you don't know how deep it is. So that was just to see how deep. So now it looks as if it's time to leave Bodo. So we're back on board. Right up until the moment we leave, they're busy transferring cargo, but the ship always goes on time. And so if you take a side trip or if you go out for a walk, you have to be back on time because they won't wait for you. They'll just go without you. So be warned if you go on this. I believe these are eider ducks. I've never seen eider ducks before. The black and white ones are the males and the brown ones are the females. We did rather disturb them. We had a nice view of them sailing alongside us as we were going out of port. Now, these are the Lofoten Islands, and I'm sure you will have heard about them. It's a mountainous chain of islands that are linked by bridges just off the coast, and the light there is just fantastic. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't right for the light for us as we came through. However, it did clear up. So it's the connecting islands with mountains and fjords. We've got colourful little coastal villages. And I believe they've got beaches, not that I remember them. So we're still in the Lofoten Islands, and this is a place called Solfire. We get there at 9 o'clock at night, and we've got, I don't know, I think we had an hour or more in port. We thought we'd go for a drink. So we went to a bar in town called Magic Ice, but it was a bit more than a bar. It was actually the world's first permanent ice gallery. So going inside, you're in subarctic temperatures, and they'd carved out the story of that part of Norway with the wildlife, the fishermen, the Vikings. Let me see, it was quite difficult to photograph in there, but it gives you a rough idea. But when it came to having a drink, this was the experience. Our glasses were actually made of ice. And they'd got a local speciality fire drink, which I partook, but you couldn't drink it from the glass. You had to have a paper straw because you would end up burning your lips on the, or, you know, you'll get an ice burn. So this is us going back to the ship. Now, if you look really carefully, on the right-hand side of these A-frames, they're actually hanging with cod. They can be a bit smelly if the wind's in the right direction. So tonight, we're told that there's a good chance that we might see the lights, and the captain takes us down on a side trip down a side of a fjord to get to a dark sky area. So before we went away, I did lots of swatting up on what to do with my camera settings so that I was all ready. And we went to bed that night half dressed, and we had the PA system in the cabin switched on. And sure enough, 11:15, the captain comes over to say, yes, the lights are here. Now, you will have to forgive my photography because this is something you don't do. You don't take pictures of the Northern Lights on a moving ship. But we saw them, and they were quite spectacular. It was roughly a 2-hour show. We obviously moved on from this troll fjord because the ship's got places it's got to be. I guess if you'd gone up on a different type of cruise, you would have stayed there all night for it. And here, you know, you've got the civilization rather spoiling the black skies, but it was fantastic. Well, you've seen the pictures, but it's fantastic to say that I've experienced it. This was taken in the cabin with my camera actually jammed up against the cabin window. That was the best stability I could get. This is a place called Harstad, and there's a pink dawn coming up through our cabin window. So this is through the cabin window. There's a funny light there. But because we were up until 1:15 in the morning, we had a very late breakfast. And this is, well, I think we were there for an hour and a half, but we spent that time at breakfast. But as we were leaving, the sun had come up and it had sort of transformed the whole area. So we've got some magnificent clear skies here. Now, this is the island of Hinnoy, and just right in the middle there is a little stone church. Oh, it's on the right-hand side now. So that's the stone church called Trondnes Church. And if you do a side trip, they take you to Trondnes Church. So we saw that in the summertime. It was quite interesting. I don't remember the mountains. They clearly were there, but in the summer, all I remember was the church. So its claim to fame is it's the most northerly brick built or stone built church. It was built in 1250. So there's a photographer's delight, a splash of red in the middle of the picture. So this is the Gisund Bridge, and it links the largest island of, now what's it called, Senja. You can do photographic workshops to Senja. I've noticed lots of professionals take people there, and these are the kind of bridges that you have between a lot of the islands and the mainland. So this is us coming into a little place called Kirkenes. We only had half an hour here. And I remember this lovely chocolate advert from our previous trip. It was so sweet. But it was cold, so -5. And it's not surprising that the sea is icing over. It's not something you see very often. Or at least I don't see it very often. And so this is the normal mode of transport for the children. They don't bother with prams and pushchairs. It's little sledges and toboggans. So a snowy wonderland. And I think they put those little red houses there just for us photographers. So this is on the way to Tromsø.
Now sailing on towards Tromsø. The open sea.
So this might have been the kind of weather that some of you had when you were disappointed. I'm not quite sure where we are here, but it's the next morning. So we've had our wonderful dog sledding trip. We were out in a wilderness, about half an hour out of town. Hammerfest. Quite interesting to see how they've got these avalanche barriers to keep the snow away from the houses. So I was fascinated with this. Tony's got the video, of course, and this little blower just blowing the snow into the sea around the port area. So it's quite considerable more snow here. You can now see why they've got these staircases taking them up to their second level. So I think this was a man. When I saw it, first of all, I thought it was a woman, but I've decided it's a man. So they're using these kick sleds to get around, and they were moving along quite fast. And now this is quite funny. I don't know if anybody else experienced people having the hot tub in the back at the back of the ship, and it was freezing. There we go. It was below zero, and these girls were having a whale of a time. So the weather had actually closed in, and we didn't actually enjoy the view quite the same. So we decided to book the side trip up to the North Cape. So you come into port down here, and it's a 20-mile run from where the ship parks up to the top. Well, in the summer, I think we did it in half an hour, but it took an hour in the winter, and we had to go on a convoy. So the convoy just went twice a day, and there were 7 coaches and a few private cars.
A little bit. We don't know what's going to come from the rest of the boat. Snow will come from, and wave will pile up, and we could easily get stuck in a little snowbank. You see all the locals from the other villages, they're stuck. On that football field, here it is, Cashwalk on the right.
Here we are, we're back on the ship now, and it's there's another blizzard blowing. So it's our last night on board ship, and unlike the other nights, which was waiter service, this is a buffet. Loads of fish, nice if you like it. So they're local king prawns, crab. I know some people are going absolutely mad over some of the things on offer, and it's a terrible picture, but this is reindeer meat, reindeer stew.
Ooh.
So it's quite a comfortable lounge, a bit more comfortable than the cafes that the other travellers use. So it's time to pack our bags. Because we're getting off ship. So Kirkenes, that's our final destination, or the turnaround point if you're doing the up and back. So we're right up here, which is, I think I said 9 miles from the Russian border. So Finland's not that far away. Sweden's just over there. It's on the top of the world, really. So another blizzard, so that the weather really had broken up. So we actually went out to a lake about half an hour out of town, and the whole idea was that we were going to go on the motor scooters. So we were togged up in these thermal gear and thermal boots, and we were given our driving instructions. We had to stay a certain distance from the one in front, and we mustn't go more than, no, we were told to go about 30 miles an hour. Unfortunately, I got stuck in front of somebody who wouldn't put her foot down, and in the end, one of the guys came round and he pulled me out so I could go fast. But we had a bit of a whiteout, so it wasn't the best conditions to see to see the view, but actually it was good fun nevertheless. So that's what I'm following. I'm following the person in front, and then a warm up afterwards in a Sami tent with hot drinks, and I think we got some dried reindeer, some dried reindeer meat.
That's horrible.
Yeah, I know, there's a
It's awful.
So when we got back to Kirkenes, of course, we went out to the dogs, to the snowmobiles with our luggage, as we'd vacated our cabin then. Our driver told us that we might be lucky to see the participants in the Alaskan dog sled race, because the leader was due into town there that day. So walking around town, there's another one of these kick sleds. I've got a bit of an obsession with these kick sleds. And this lady here told us that they're actually called Spark. So you can see here the sort of the multi-use for them. So NRK, that's the equivalent, the Norwegian equivalent of the BBC. So the NRK reporters were there to actually film and record this dog race, and the presenter, that was the lady there with the microphone, she's got some very posh reindeer boots on. There was a bit of a sort of festive atmosphere. The whole town seemed to be coming out for this. I mean, see, it's a world championship race, and there were a lot of people around. I think we must have been quite lucky to be able to book our room in our hotel, because the hotel were taken over by NRK, and some of the actual dog teams were staying there overnight. The Norwegian army were helping out as well. They've got a discotheque on for the youngsters. And the little children were having a skiing race around the town square, which was quite sweet. And so this is the leader coming through. She's got 12 dogs. They go through at quite a nice pace. It's not hurried. It's obviously timed, but they're having forced stops. And as she came through, everybody's cheering for her. I mean, so we didn't know it was a lady until she'd actually gone through. And we discovered, so this is the halfway point. How many is it? I might be able to tell you later, 1,200 kilometres. So this is the turnaround point. And this lady was first at this point, and we discovered afterwards she came third overall. So next morning, around our hotel, on two sides of the hotel, there are 136 bags of dog food, which, you know, is quite funny really when you think about it. And I think I've taken this from my bedroom window. So this guy is actually taking dog food out to one of the teams. So our hotel was hosting, so we were the depot. So the Finnsmark Lope, the longest sled dog race in Europe. You've probably all heard of the Iditarod in Alaska. That's 1,500 kilometers. Well, this is 1,200 kilometers. But for Europe, this is the race. You know, if you've got a team of dogs, you want to be here. So we're up here in Kirkenes. So you can see this is where they start and this is where they finish, but some of them only do a portion. This is next year's map. So they start off with 14 dogs, but they can get dogs lame on the way. They've got teams of vets out at all the posts. It's not my picture, but just to give you an idea, it's quite a big concern. So this is Alta at the very beginning of the race. And then in the car park, that's in the main car park and in our hotel car park, they've got these mobile dog kennels. So these dogs have obviously been retired during the race. So the lady who came through with 12 dogs, she'd lost 2 dogs on the way. So they'd been pensioned off. They get cuts on their feet from the snow or the ice. That's it, they're done for. So this is in the morning. You can see there's a team just going to come in. So they come in all during the day. As I say, it's not obvious it's a race, but it's timed, and they have these enforced stops. And there's stewards to make sure they go in the right direction. And I just love their little socks. They're anti-slip socks, protect their little feet. And then they pick up a bale of hay and they bed down in the car park. They're each given a blanket, and then their mushers go in for a meal, or they stay overnight, and they'll start again the next day. So that's the end of our actual Kirkenes bit, but there's a wee bit more. Next morning, so our final day, and on the way to the international airport, so the sun's out again, and this is the view from the airport bus. Just a couple of pictures. And I'll tell you a funny story. I persuaded Tony to buy one of these trapper hats, and he was not going to wear it. However, he did wear it, and he wore it every day. Not our plane, but I thought I'd put that in to show how snowy the actual runway was. And what was quite a new experience for us was having the wings de-iced. So we went from Kirkenes to Oslo via Tromsø, and then Oslo down to Gatwick. And each time we flew off, we had the wings defrosted. So that's the last view of winter, or it's coming up, the last view of winter deep below us. So we'd participated in 2 new adventures for us, and we'd seen the Northern Lights. So we were quite happy for that. Thanks for watching.